सेव किया था ना?
मैं सिर्फ इसलिए गया था क्योंकि उसने मुझे कॉल किया, that's it. But listen तो.
Save it for someone else.
जिंदगी में सेव करना जरूरी है, मगर जब बात पैसों की हो, सिर्फ सेविंग से काम नहीं चलेगा। इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट कीजिए और अपने सेविंग्स को आगे बढ़ने का मौका दीजिए।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
If the announcements about a special session of Parliament and a committee on one nation, one election were meant to psych out the opposition, the purpose was achieved. In fact, I would say more than achieved. It left the opposition alliance, India, huddled in Mumbai on Friday, spooked. A hurriedly constituted coordination committee was one of the visible fallouts, but it unsettled them more than they would admit publicly. What is Prime Minister Narendra Modi up to? It is a question India leaders have been asking since that day. Not Rahul Gandhi, of course. He is flying out of the country as G20 leaders arrive in New Delhi this week. He would rather project himself as a Vishwaguru of a different kind, interacting with lawmakers in Brussels and students in Paris before moving to Oslo to address Indians there. Sam Pitroda must get credit for this clever way out to justify his foreign trips. Rahul might not seem bothered about the proposed simultaneous elections or a special parliament session agenda, but his colleagues in the Congress lack his courage and conviction, so to say. Let me share my conversation with a Congress MP to give you an idea about how much the BJP can psych out its rivals. So I was telling that Congress MP frankly that, I had no idea whatsoever about the agenda of the parliament session, because even Parliamentary Affairs Minister Prahlad Joshi seemed to be clueless, because he told reporters on Friday, and I'm quoting him, that when the agenda of the special session is finalized in 4 days, we will definitely discuss with you. That was the Parliamentary Affairs Minister. He couldn't have been more candid. The session was convened first, and the agenda was to be discussed later. But that is of little solace to opposition leaders. It could be anything, women's reservation bill, uniform civil code, anything for all I know, I told the Congress MP. And basically pleading ignorance. And how can the BJP go ahead with the UCC when even its allies in the Northeast, the AIADMK and Jagan Mohan Reddy's YSRCP, have such strong reservations? That aside, the Congress MP wouldn't agree. He said, when did this government wait for a parliament session or a political consensus? They can simply bring ordinances. He was trying to argue, even though he didn't know. Well, I didn't have to feel embarrassed about my lack of knowledge or ignorance about the agenda, because even the Parliamentary Affairs Minister was unaware. And then the Congress MP tells me, you know what, they are advancing the Lok Sabha election. Take it from me, one nation, one election is a jumla, but he is using it to set the tone for advancing Lok Sabha elections. That was the Congress MP telling me decisively before he hung up the phone. But he is among many people in both ruling and opposition circles who seem to be convinced that PM Modi is preparing for early polls. Even Information and Broadcasting Minister Anurag Thakur's clarification that there are no plans for early election has failed to put a lid on this speculation. And there are convenient explanations for this speculation. The BJP is on the back foot in the next round of assembly elections. It has lost steam in Telangana and Chhattisgarh, and in Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan. Party Hai's priorities seem to be very different. That is to fix Shivraj Singh Chauhan and Vasundhara Raje and deny them another term in office. In this scenario, advancing the Lok Sabha poll to schedule it with the assembly elections in November is seen as a plausible move to give a fillip to the BJP with Modi as the face. Besides, the doddering Khattar government in Haryana and the three-legged Maharashtra government, both of which still have a year to go, might also benefit if PM Modi becomes the face in the simultaneous polls. To top it all, going by those who see early Lok Sabha polls, all these moves would be projected as Modi's grand noble attempt to save money from elections to spend on the poor. Many other reasons have been cited in support of this theory. The monsoon has been below normal, with August being the driest since 1901. And if the El Nino effect continues, the government will be facing the problem of high food inflation in the months running up to the 2024 election. Many politicians therefore think that early polls would be safer. As for me, the point I find the strongest in favor of their argument, though not convincingly, is that Prime Minister Modi has avoided a cabinet reshuffle despite many allies wanting it. It has been 2 months since G. Kishan Reddy's appointment as Telangana BJP chief. He still remains the Minister for Culture, Tourism and Northeastern region. The Prime Minister has not sought Reddy's resignation yet, nor has he shown any inclination to revamp and give a new look to his team ahead of the Lok Sabha election. These arguments seem to suggest a lot of advantages if Modi seeks to, or if PM Modi seeks a renewed mandate in November, December. But there is a flip side to it. It's not just about how Vajpayee government paid for its overconfidence in 2004, where it advanced the Lok Sabha election. Modi is of course not Vajpayee. But before we discuss why early polls don't suit PM Modi, let's take a look at the one nation, one election concept he is aggressively pursuing now. What's the government's or the ruling parties or its spin masters' arguments in favor of one nation, one election? Primarily three. First, that it will save a lot of money. Second, frequent enforcements of model code of conduct will hamper development works. Third, simultaneous polls will ensure our rulers are not in permanent election mode. These are the three arguments being proffered. So let's examine each of these points. Let's come to the first point first. In a 2017 discussion paper, Analysis of Simultaneous Elections, the What, Why and How, Niti Ayog's Vivek Debroy and Kishore Desai pegged the cost of election in 2009 at around 1100 crores, 1115 crores, and in 2014 at 3870 crores. The Parliamentary Standing Committee on Law and Justice, in a 2015 report, quoted the Election Commission of India as saying that the cost of simultaneous elections would be 4500 crores. Now, this appears to suggest a difference of barely 100 crores in costs in simultaneous and staggered elections. So, if you're right now, if your 2014 Lok Sabha election cost 3870 crores, and if simultaneous polls cost you 4500 crores, as the Election Commission told the Standing Committee, there is not much difference. On Sunday, leader of the opposition in the Rajya Sabha, Mallikarjun Kharge, said that the Election Commission incurred a cost of 5500 crore in conducting all elections between 2014 and 2019, including the 2019 Lok Sabha election. And Kharge was, of course, he was slamming the government. He said, it's only a fraction of the government's budget expenditure, and it makes the saving logic like penny wise, pound foolish. That was the Congress president. For a $3.75 trillion economy, the world's largest democracy, saving 1,000 crores or so in democratic elections in 5 years is a pittance. Now, factor in the Election Commission's submission in 2014 that the cost of procuring additional electronic voting machines or EVMs and paper trail machines for holding simultaneous polls would amount to 9,300 crore rupees. And it's not a one-time expenditure. And EVM's life is 15 years only. So, an average additional cost of 3,000 crore per simultaneous election And if you do the maths, how much money does India really save through simultaneous elections then? Kiran Rijiju said in Parliament last December that you would be saving a huge amount of money, but he did not give the exact figures. In an interview with the INS in 2018, then Chief Election Commissioner O.P. Rawat said that whether simultaneous elections cut costs would need a systematic study. So basically nobody knows exactly how much we will save. And the figures that are available now, suggest that there is hardly any difference. But let's make this thing very clear. We are talking about taxpayers' money here. The cost incurred by the centre in conducting Lok Sabha elections and by the states in conducting assembly elections. If there are simultaneous elections, the centre and the states will pay 50-50. So when it comes to taxpayers' money, one nation, one election may end up saving a very small amount, if at all. What we read about astronomical amounts being spent on elections is largely about expenses borne by political parties and candidates. So there was a report by the Center for Media Studies, that's a New Delhi-based research organization. It estimated poll expenditure in 2019 as 55,000 to 60,000 crores. It was 30,000 crores in 2014, which went up to 55,000 to 60,000 crores in 2019. Out of this, political parties and candidates spent 44,000 crores, and there were other heads, of course. Of the estimated expenditures in 2014, we are talking about the CMS report, the BJP's share was 40 to 45% of those expenditures, and the Congress's share was 30 to 32%. That was in 2014. In 2019, the BJP's share in these expenditures went up to 45 to 55%, as against the Congress's 15 to 20%. So the ruling party ends up spending much more. As the CMS report suggested, the BJP has reasons to fret over expenses. But these astounding figures need to be authenticated, because the Election Commission has told the Supreme Court that it does not endorse the CMS report. That's another story though. So yes, political parties end up spending thousands of crores on elections. It's a matter of concern, obviously. But there is another side to it. Where do these parties get the money from? Corporate and business houses? Anonymous donors? And as the common perception goes, black money? One may argue that many of those donors are also taxpayers. But to be politically incorrect, why not let them spend that money on elections? After all, that money is routed back into the economy, whether it's spent on organizing rallies, quote-unquote buying politicians, influencers or voters, or selling pakoras at rally venues. From helicopter companies to hoteliers and even those making or erecting hoardings and banners, everybody gets a share. It may sound like a cynical, unethical idea, but come to think of it, will political parties and politicians stop taking those donations if they have to spend less on elections? I won't take a guess. So that's my take on all these talks about simultaneous elections saving huge money. We are basically talking about saving the money of political parties and candidates. Coming to the second point about the model code of conduct interfering in governance, there is a simple solution: reduce the MCC period, or the Election Commission can set up a mechanism to vet and allow the governments to carry on with their developmental schemes and announcements without prejudice to the election process. The Election Commission doesn't have to delay announcing poll dates because the Prime Minister or somebody else has to go and announce new development projects or inaugurate them in the states. Just keep governance out of the MCC. Governments announce all SOPs before the MCC comes in place anyway. And the people don't judge a government or don't vote for a government for what it has done for the last 2 months of the five-year long tenure. As for the third argument, about our government getting time to focus on development works if there are no elections. I mean, who has stopped it? If Prime Minister Modi has to focus on every single election, even for assembly and municipal elections, it's the compulsion of the BJP. Ideally, why should the Prime Minister be leading all poll campaigns, slamming the opposition parties, chief ministers and governments when he needs to befriend and co-opt them for larger national interests? The biggest drawback of simultaneous polls is that when we are discussing the merits and demerits of the right to recall our MLAs, MPs and higher-ups when they don't deliver, simultaneous elections will reduce voters to what I can say, to go back 50 years to the days of Guljar's Aandhi film. You remember? That's 1975 film, where you saw voters welcoming politicians with songs like Salam Kijiye Ali Janab Aaye Hain, 5 सालों का देने हिसाब आया है. Under the existing system, if say people were unhappy with the demonetization decision of 2016, the central government was forced to respond with alacrity because 5 states were going to polls in the next 4-5 months, including important ones like UP, Uttarakhand, Punjab. If those affected by the GST in 2017 were not happy, the government had to go out of the way to address their concerns and grievances because Gujarat and Himachal Pradesh were going to polls a few months later. But if we have a system in place where the governments at the center and in the states are secure for 5 years, forget about accountability. And I'm talking about all parties here, be it the BJP or the Congress or any other party. Coming to the previous point about the speculation about early elections, one doesn't know if Modi is as confident of his government's popularity as Vajpayee was when he advanced the polls. Vajpayee's individual popularity was much bigger than his party's, just like Modi's. Vajpayee thought he had a better ally in the AIADMK in Tamil Nadu. He decided to gamble with Chandrababu Naidu in Andhra Pradesh, despite the latter's unpopularity. The alliance partners let Vajpayee down. But there were, of course, many other factors for the Vajpayee government's defeat. A shining India is what BJP leaders talk about even today. The opposition is in disarray and has no narrative, like in 2004. Will PM Modi fall into this trap? If he goes for early elections, it would reflect insecurities. It would seem like all his grandstanding about simultaneous polls is about saving his party in Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh and other states, and not about saving money for the poor. Just because things are likely to get difficult because of underpower monsoon, he should want to get over with the election, choosing to deal with farmers or consumers' distress after securing power again. Or is he worried about the opposition consolidation? In any case, he would emerge as an insecure leader, which the BJP can't afford. And here I'm giving arguments against early election. Modi's public persona is all about strength and decisiveness, someone who leads from the front during challenging times. I mean, would the BJP reduce PM Modi to someone looking for manipulative tactics to stay in power? That would be political harakiri. There will be questions once public debate starts on one nation, one election. We have seen the deliberations and reports of the Parliamentary Standing Committee, the Niti Aayog and the Election Commission, and they have all favoured it. One doesn't even need to discuss how the BJP will ensure the passage of constitutional amendments and ratification by half of the states, given that most of the regional parties will be wary of that, in the current scenario at least. It looks very, very difficult. Going by the discussion so far, assembly tenures will have to be curtailed or extended if one nation, one election has to be implemented. Going by the provisions of the constitution, the terms can be extended, terms of the assembly, in case of a national emergency. How would the government get around it then? The BJP leads or is part of governments in a dozen states, including many in the northeast. Would the party be able to persuade its chief ministers to curtail their tenures? And one is not even talking about states ruled by non-BJP parties. To show that he is serious about simultaneous elections because he wants to spend more money on eradicating poverty, PM Modi would need a moral high ground. So what if the Congress and other opposition parties don't want it and would rather cling on to power? The BJP would show the way and get all its governments to resign and go for simultaneous polls. That would be the high moral ground, the moral high ground the opposition would find very difficult to counter. But can PM Modi get his chief ministers like, say, Yogi Adityanath or Himanta Biswa Sharma to go for snap polls for the larger one nation, one election objective? Your guess is as good as mine. One of the common suggestions heard from the Law Commission and the Parliamentary Standing Committee to ensure continuity for 5 years is to ensure that when there is a no confidence motion against a government, there also has to be a confidence motion in favor of a government to be headed by a named future Prime Minister. So put an alternative government in place if you want to bring this down. The suggestion is like, the voting should take place for the two motions together. And the first motion, that is of no confidence, should not be carried without the passage of the second motion. So if you don't have an alternative government, you cannot bring down the government in place. The opposition may be weak, but it can still project these proposals as a move that is meant to ensure that even if the BJP doesn't have a full majority in future or has 230 to 40 seats in the Lok Sabha, it does not want the PM to be replaced, or it wants to secure its government. Hypothetically, even if the BJP falls short of a majority, say in 2024, it can form the government with support from friendly parties like, say, YSRCP or BJD. But if these parties want to pull out at any point in time, they can't bring the government down because the motley crowd of opposition leaders with conflicting ambitions will not have a consensus over an alternate PM candidate. Given the state of the opposition in India today, that consensus won't be there, of course. So is the Modi-led government feeling insecure about the mandate it may get in 2024? These are the narratives the opposition may be building as the debate on simultaneous elections continues. PM Modi can't afford to let it build. He can't afford to let an impression go that because things are getting difficult for the BJP, he is looking for options to continue in office. The one nation, one election push lends credence to that impression. People love Modi because he delivers in times of adversity, be it COVID-19 or terrorist strikes on the country. A hint of frailty, insecurity, or impression of manipulation to stay in power would discredit the Narendra Modi people have so much trust in. And he knows it better than anyone. And that's why I do believe in Anurag Thakur's assertion that Prime Minister Modi would like to serve till the last day of his term. I can't, however, say the same about the political class that looks convinced that PM Modi would spring another surprise on them. I'm talking about the opposition parties. That's all from me in this episode of Politically Correct. Thanks for watching.